Are you thinking about making a move to Portland and you're wondering about the cost of living here? Well, in today's video, we're getting after it and we're doing it right now. I'm Ann Stewart. I've been a Portland native all my life and been in real estate for 24 years here in the local area. And if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you can get our content that we put out every single week on living in Portland, all things Portland life. We'd love to have you a part of our community, and we look forward to sharing what we know with you. I've been wanting to do a cost of living video on Portland for a long time, but as you can imagine, everybody's scenario is so different. But what I thought I would do today is bring up some stats that I've found about Portland, but also share with you my bills. Yes, my bills, to give you an idea of what you can expect. Now, I own 2 properties and I actually pay utilities on both properties. So I have a pretty good gauge on what things might look like to cost. But I also want to just preface by saying everybody is going to be different. You might be buying a large home or living in a small home or a house that's on acreage that only has a well and septic, or you might have, different scenarios for different things, but we're just going to go based on generalization for the most part. As you kind of work through your questions and answers on this video, you can fine tune that to maybe what you're looking for specifically. I think all in all, Portland isn't that expensive. I, just compare notes with some of the people that move to this area, even places like Texas. We get a lot of people coming from Texas, and Texas used to be known to be extremely affordable. But when you start talking to them about their property taxes and their insurance and things of that nature, you start to realize maybe the scales kind of balance out a little bit, or maybe it's not as expensive as people thought or think. But in today's video, we're going to cover some generalizations. You be the judge. You're the ones coming to possibly live in Portland. Maybe you're living here and you want to make some comments below about what you're paying. And maybe I'm way off. But again, it all depends on energy efficiency, there's a lot of factors. So that's why I've been a little hesitant about doing a video on cost of living. But I figure, hey, let's just use my world as an example, and then you guys can kind of be the judges. Okay, let's start with housing. So the average home price in Portland Metro is $550,000. But wait, that is a bit deceiving, and I'll tell you why. Because that is a data point that is taken from all the major metro cities around the Portland metro area, but is not indicative of what you would pay on average for a particular city you might be looking into. And a lot of people, when they, call us to talk about, hey, we want this location and this type of house, they quickly realize 550 is not going to cut it. 550 is kind of on the starter home aspect of Portland for the most part, not in all areas, but a lot of areas. And it's hard to get what you want is what I'm trying to say. So we find a lot of people end up having to look in the 650 on average area or higher, depending on location. Now, remember, there's some hot spots around Portland that are highly desirable that can be in upwards of $1 million for the average sale price. So it's very easy to go up from that point. But on average, we see people realize 550 for what they're hoping to get isn't really what they're going to want to live in or be in that location. So they oftentimes find that they're going up in price, or they have a budget that can go up in price. So while 550 is our average, it is not necessarily the average of what people typically buy that we see, especially if they're looking in certain locations. So just keep that in mind. Every city, every little neighborhood has its own average sales price, and it is not 550. So set your expectations on that. If you are coming to Portland to buy, look at the average price that homes are selling for in your particular area, if you know what area you're looking in or what type of home you want. Or better yet, ask us, because sometimes we can help you gauge. A lot of times, here's your budget and here's what you can get. So I would say on average, people go up from 550 to get what they want. Now, what's the average rent in Portland? It's $2,600 for a house, a single family home, 3 or 4 bedroom on average. So that's what you're going to pay if you're going to rent. And of course, depending on interest rates when you go to buy, which I can't quote those on here, but we've been seeing them bounce around the 6s and 7s the last couple of years. So, always check to make sure with a lender or a banker that you can get kind of fine-tuned in, what your mortgage would look like. You're probably going to have a much higher mortgage than you would rent, just based on what I see. But those are kind of the averages you can expect for rent, mortgage, interest rates and the average sale prices. Okay, let's talk about groceries from my own personal experience. Now, I have a family of 3. I've got boys that eat a lot. So we go to Costco. Everyone seems to go to Costco, it seems like, and you just can't get out of Costco cheap. I feel like our average bill, when I looked back at our expenses, was right around $450, sometimes less, sometimes more. Costco is a trap, okay? But it is a trap that you're getting a lot of value and you can get a lot of things for the money. So budget around, if you go to Costco, then you know that your budget's probably not too far off from mine. Now, I love Trader Joe's. I'm a Trader Joe's junkie. I love getting certain things from Trader Joe's. My average trip at Trader Joe's runs about $120. But like this last weekend, I hadn't gone to the grocery store in a really long time because we were in and out of town and super busy. So I felt like I ended up spending just under $200 for some staple stuff, that you just, got to fill up on. But I would say on average, my bill looks like it's right around $120 to get some things that I like to get there. And then, of course, I go to Safeway a lot, too. So I always feel like there's 3, maybe you're like us. We have to go to more than one place to get our groceries. I'm looking forward to the day, which is not too far off from the distant future, when my 18-year-old is going to be out of the house, probably eating somebody else out of house and home in college, or at least eating the college out of house and home. But here we are probably going to be simplifying our budget for groceries. But even still, I feel like when we looked at our averages over the last year, which I know is really tough on some months, depending on what we're doing, it can be around $1,200. It's gone well over that too. We're trying to tighten up and watch that because it's amazing how expensive things are at the grocery store. But I feel like for the family of 3, doing what we normally typically do, and we're not like diehards watching every dollar and, not allowing ourselves to get everything. We sometimes have splurges and things like that, but I would say $1,200 is pretty safe for us if we go to those 3 grocery stores monthly. Okay, let's talk about dining out. Dining out, I'll be honest with you, before COVID, I ate a lot. Post-COVID, I don't eat out that much. Personally speaking, I feel like dining out, number one, I don't feel like the food quality is what I'm expecting for how much I'm paying. Maybe you've experienced that too. I learned to cook a lot more during COVID. I enjoy cooking if I have time to do it. And quite frankly, it's just more economical for us to cook at home. So when we go out to eat, we're usually going to Chipotle because it's quick and fresh and relatively healthy. I would say that I can get my 2 tacos if I walk in the door for about $6.60. But on average, if we're going to go to Chipotle, we're spending around $40 for all 3 of us, not including beverages. Another example is we went out to dinner, just my husband and I, and it was $46 to go to P.F. Chang's. And that included a Diet Coke and hot herbal tea. And just those 2 drinks were $9. So we had to rethink that a little bit. We're like, wow, $9 for two drinks. Okay. So going out to eat for 2 people, you're easily going to spend between $35 to $50. And what we have found is if we go out to eat and we're all ordering like a beverage and it's a sit down restaurant and we're adding tip, it can easily hit $75 to $100. I remember the days when we would spend $100 and it was like a fine dining experience. Remember those days? Now it's like you just can't get around spending that kind of money at a normal restaurant, or even some of the fast food restaurants. I've noticed, like, I think we went to Burgerville a couple months back and it was like $50. We didn't sit down. We went through the drive-through. We don't eat out. We don't buy a lot of fast food, but when we do, we like certain types of places. But yeah, going out to eat is adding up these days. So I don't think anyone in the country is, having it any better. We don't eat out a lot. We would rather spend our money on groceries than eating out. But when we do, we're noticing that, it's a lot. And then went out to coffee the other day. My husband got 2 shots of espresso and it was $5 and I think 50 cents. And I got a cappuccino, 12 ounce, and it was like $6.50. So even the cost of just bare bones coffee, like 2 shots of espresso was over $5 when we buy it or make it here at home for like less than $1. So, for us, we do watch that. Maybe you're experiencing that you're doing the same thing after COVID. I mean, inflation has really kicked our butts when it comes to food, and whether it's dining out or groceries, it has really been tough on the pocketbook. So when we look at our dining bill, we're actually a lot less than we were pre-COVID, but our grocery bill is a heck of a lot higher and can get a lot higher because we're cooking more and we're packing our food and we're taking it with us wherever we go. But yeah, going out to eat here in Portland is very expensive. And now there are a lot of food carts and mom and pop stores that we like to support when we can. And sometimes you can find a little better deals at the food carts, but even still, it's just gotten a little bit more expensive. So if you're into fine dining, if you're a foodie, you're probably going to have a high cost of eating out every single time you go out every month. But it depends on how you program it. Like I said, I will sometimes just go get 2 tacos at Chipotle for $6.60. I feel like I'm getting a deal and it's satisfying. But, it's one of those things where I think our dining out bill, the highest it's gotten usually in a month's time is like $800. It adds up so fast, doesn't it? We're trying to really gauge that going into the new year and trying to cut back on our dining out bill. It's been way higher before, but we've kind of cut it back a little bit here and there. So I don't know about you, but we try to make coffee at home, take it with us. We do what we can. But yeah, the cost of food and groceries has really exploded. Okay, gas prices. They have been notoriously out of control the last several years. Right now, as we speak and do this video, it's anywhere from $2.89 to a little over $3 for a tank of gas. A lot of people go to Costco and take advantage of their gas prices because they're just hard to beat anywhere. But right here on the West Coast, we're always notoriously higher than the rest of the country. Always. I mean, we've studied this. We've watched this. Back when we were hitting $4 or $5 a gallon a few years ago, we were still consistently the highest in the nation. So West Coast really gets hammered with gas prices. So if you're going to move here, hey, if you work from home, great. But if you do a lot of commuting or, in your car type work, just be aware you're always going to pay high in gas prices. Okay, let's get into utilities. Like I'd mentioned previously, I own 2 houses. I pay utilities for 2 houses. So I can have a pretty good idea of the averages. And I'm giving you averages for 2 different houses that one's larger than the other. Let's just put it that way. And it'll help you understand kind of the average. I personally have heard that Oregon in general doesn't pay as high of utilities as some places in the country, but it is dependent on the age of the house and the efficiency. So if you have an older house that has, poor insulation or an old gas furnace or whatever. I mean, those definitely play into your utility bills, as well as older windows. A lot of people don't realize old windows will absolutely, cause you to have higher utility costs. So we're really big here in Portland. Actually, they make us do a energy score before you put a house on the market in Multnomah County and in the city of Hillsborough. I don't know why it's just the city of Hillsborough, which is in Washington County, but an energy score is required. So you as a buyer are able to look at an energy score and it tells you how efficient the house is. It doesn't tell you the cost of living in that house or the bills, but it gives you a number that can help you gauge whether that house is going to maybe need some, improvements on its energy so that if you want your utility bills to go down or, older homes obviously tend to get older, lower scores because by the nature of being older, they just don't have the same, code as we do in today's time, but it can help you gauge what you might expect in your utility bills. You can always ask for the high-low averages from the homeowner of what they on average pay. So for an example, you might pay less in the summer for gas. So for instance, our natural gas bills tend to be lower in the summertime than they are in the wintertime. Why? Because in the wintertime, we're cranking the gas furnace, right? It's freezing here. It's always cold. We have gas fireplaces. We run those a lot. So your utility bill for gas is going to be higher in the wintertime on average. And I would say it's probably on average $30 a month in the summertime and closer to $200 a month on average in the wintertime. Now, sometimes we don't turn on our air conditioner until about July or August, depending on the weather, of course. You don't always need your air conditioner until it gets really hot because it can be like 70 degrees, 75 degrees in the summertime. And you don't kick on the air conditioning until you feel like you need it in most cases. At least we try not to. So a lot of times our gas bill is really low in the summertime. Now, we'll crank the air conditioning, throughout part of July and August, maybe even into September, depending on how hot it is. Actually, it was 80 degrees in August or October this year. So we were using the air conditioner in the month of October, which is wild. That doesn't actually happen like ever. But yeah, so, I would say $30 low month, $200 high month for gas. Okay, your electric bill. It's going to vary. This is a big one that'll vary depending on your house, your size, all the things. You're going to use a lot of electricity. Our utility bills in the electricity department actually went up about 19% a year ago. Now, it freaked everybody out, and naturally it would, because that's a 20% jump, give or take. But in general, what I discovered is that we're actually one of the cheapest electricity utilities in the country. I was kind of surprised to hear that. So just to give you an average, our lowest electricity bill was around $51 this year, and the highest was around $250. So it obviously depends on seasonality once again. So sometimes electricity and gas bills go up and down the same because, you're using things at different times, but the heat runs all throughout for the bulk of the year, right? So typically in the wintertime, we're using a lot of electricity to keep the houses warm, all the time. Some people set their thermostat so it's really cold at night, and then it turns on in the morning, and then it kind of, levels out a little bit during the day, depending on if you work from home or not. But a lot of people control as best as they can by regulating their thermostat so that, they're maximizing when they're getting usage. And it really depends on what your comfort level is. Some people, you walk in their houses are 80 degrees. Other people, they won't let you touch it. Anything over 73 is not put on a sweater, right? So on average, I would say you're probably looking at safely about $150 to $200 on average a month. It seemed like that was fairly consistent for electricity. Now, again, I'm speaking very generally. I'm sure you'll say things in the comments like, oh, my electricity bill is so much higher. It could be. You could have a smaller house and it's far more inefficient, and it's going to create a problem for your electricity bills. So that's why we emphasize the energy and the windows and, all that stuff. So just be aware of that. Okay, garbage. Again, garbage is anywhere from $120 to $138 a month. And that's for garbage, recycle, and lawn debris. Now, if you have a gardener, or if you do, different methodologies for recycling, or, maybe you have, compost bins. A lot of people do that around here. You can kind of take off some of those costs. But on average, that's what it runs for garbage and recycle. Now, let's talk about cable. Cable is one of those things where it's going to depend on, if you have all the streaming channels and everything, it's not uncommon to see people pay about $180 to $200 a month. Now, if you do Ziply Fiber, you can slice that thing right in half. Some people only have some streaming channels. I don't even want to touch this one that much, because everybody looks at their cable bill a little bit differently on how they choose to do it. Wi-Fi, obviously, that the cost of that included with that. So just be aware that, however you choose to get your Wi-Fi and your cable is a little bit something I'm not going to spend a ton of time on, but you can easily spend $200 a month or close to it if you want all the access to everything, which I know some people do. And then other people only pay for YouTube streaming, YouTube TV, or Ziply Fiber, one of those. So do your homework on that, but you don't have to pay $200 a month. I would say when you look at the grand total of a lot of the utility bills, the one thing I kind of did was an average, what are we spending on gas, sewer, water, cable, electricity, all those things on average a month. And it varied from $440 a month up to $700 a month, depending on the month. So I hope that gives you a gauge. I know a lot of times when people call, they want to talk about utilities. They want to understand if they're moving to Portland, what's it going to run them in addition to their mortgage or their rent for utilities. And I think that's probably a fair range. And again, you can always check out on a property the high, low, and average from the homeowner, what they're experiencing throughout the year, because it can vary. Obviously, the bigger the house, the more your utility bills are going to run. So if you're looking at larger footprints beyond 3,500 square feet, you should really expect to budget for a lot more in terms of that. Also, are you going to do your own landscaping and things of that nature? So just be aware of, things that can add up if you are, signing up for an acreage home, large lot, gardening. If you're not planning on doing all that work yourself, you hire it out. That's going to add to your monthly. Okay, water and sewer, you pay them bi-monthly, at least we do. and it runs around $120 bi-monthly. So for water, sewer. Now, if you have a ton of water usage, that bill could definitely go up. It definitely gets higher. I looked at the bills. It was definitely higher in the month of August, probably because it's the driest, right? We don't get a lot of rain, if any rain, in the month of August. Our lawns get dried out and we're like trying to keep everything green like crazy, and we're not winning that battle very easily, and our water bill goes way, way up. So August is the month where you're probably going to, if you have a yard and you're trying to keep it green, that's when your bill probably jumps for the water bill. But other than that, it's pretty consistent month over month because, we use about the same water and sewer. Okay, let's talk about incomes. Now in Portland, the average annual income is $117,000. That's what I found online that seemed to represent what the average annual income is. Doesn't clarify if it's a dual income or not, but let's just go with that for now. Now, the average age bracket between 25 and 44 makes an average of $96,000, and the median is around $85,000. Now, I saw an article a few months back. I tried to find it, couldn't find it, but it said to live comfortably in Portland, you had to make at least about $75,000. So that kind of helps you gauge things that, may give you a ballpark assessment of what the median and average incomes look like here in Portland. Now, Portland is not the cheapest place to live in general, but when you look at the West Coast and you compare us to California or Washington, you're going up towards Seattle, it's easy to say that we're the cheapest West Coast city. You've heard us say it on other videos, but the reality is if you're looking to move to the West Coast or the Pacific Northwest, we are still relatively inexpensive for a major city on the West Coast. There are smaller cities that you can live further out and smaller towns that are much, much cheaper, but we're kind of comparing Seattle to Portland to some of the other major cities in California. So right away, we're going to win the most inexpensive award for the most inexpensive West Coast city. But that doesn't mean we're cheap by any means. And that may not feel cheap, especially if you're coming from other states where cost of living is a whole lot cheaper. So let's get into the details and specifics of the cost of living on different aspects. Okay, let's talk about homeowners insurance for a minute, because I think this is a valid point for cost of living. I think this is where Portland can probably get a positive on this particular topic. We talk to a lot of people, as you can imagine, from around the country. And a lot of people that are moving to Portland are coming from states where they're paying an extraordinary amount for insurance. We've heard such a wide range of cost for insurance that you would never see here in the Portland metro area. We have talked to people from Florida and Texas and areas of California that get affected a lot by natural disasters. And they either can't get homeowners insurance or they are finding it to be wildly expensive. I think we heard from one person who called us that they got a bill for $14,000 a year to keep their homeowners insurance. Luckily, they found some cheaper. They cut that in half, but still, we're hearing from people that can't get insurance, homeowners insurance. We're hearing from people that, they're spending $4,000, $5,000, $7,000 a year on homeowners insurance in other states. So I think that you can expect on average, again, depends on the house and the property, but on average, we're seeing the homeowner's insurance be around $1,500 a year for an average house here in Portland. Could be less, could be more, but that is about the average. Now, where the variables come in is if you're buying acreage property that has outbuildings, or you're buying a larger home that, just has more to cover. And, let me just be honest. Everything happening in the California wildfires this year is going to drastically affect every state in the union, in my opinion. We're already hearing about insurance going up all across the board. Investment properties is going up. I think insurance is going to be reevaluated in general, because I think insurance companies are looking at what's happening and saying, they're going to be charging more or changing the way they insure. So to be continued in the insurance department. But as of right now, at the time I'm doing this video, it's safe to say your average insurance cost is looking right around $1,500, give or take. Okay, let's talk about property taxes. If you are a homeowner planning to buy, what are you going to expect to pay in property taxes? We're right around 1%. So average price here in Portland, if you look at the 550 as the average, you're going to be looking at about $5,500 a year in property taxes. Now that can change. I mean, if you look in Multnomah County, you're going to pay a little bit more, but depending on where you're looking, it can be up or down from there. So usually what the 1% rule is a fairly safe range, give or take, but we have seen it be drastically more than that in some areas. So just look at your property taxes in the price point that you're looking in, because you will find there's a variance. It doesn't always follow that 1% status quo, and there can be different reasons for that. But on average, it's around that 1%. It's a little higher than the national average, but that should give you a baseline for what you can expect to pay in property taxes. Now, I know we haven't talked about anything fun. We've talked about the serious stuff or the fixed costs or the things that you're supposed to pay to kind of live your life. But, you want to budget for the fun entertainment thing, in my opinion. Maybe you have hobbies like yoga, or there's a lot of things you can do around Portland that are free, like hiking and driving through the gorge or going to the coast, unless you stop and buy stuff. But if you do have hobbies or you'd like to go out and do fun stuff, you need to budget for that. Truthfully, I was just at Top Golf. I don't know if you've heard of Top Golf. It's all over the country. They have one here in the Portland metro area, and it was $100 for 1 hour with some appetizers and a couple of drinks. And I was kind of like, wow, $100 for 1 hour. Okay. Not cheap to go out and do some fun stuff. But if you want to live your life and have some fun, you got to budget for it. So find out what it is you like to do. If you like to go out and do things, is it free or is it going to cost you? We're believers in, you go out and do the fun, free stuff as much as you can, especially here in Portland. But to go out to eat and to go do something fun, it's going to be costing you. I did a video recently on a new venue coming to Portland, and a lot of comments were about the fact that it was going to be like $150 for the, where they sit you down and have dinner and they pair the dinner elements with the movie. And it was like, yeah, it's going to cost you to have that kind of experience. It's not just going out to eat. It's also pairing it with an experience. So those things do cost money. It's not free here and it's not super cheap, but just budget for, wanting to go out and maybe see live music or go to a brewery or go do, things around town that do cost some money. I don't think you have to break the bank unless you have an expensive hobby. But here in Portland, there is a lot to do. There's a lot of places to go eat. There's a lot of places to enjoy good beverages and entertainment and things of that nature. So if you're somebody who's moving here to enjoy the life that you have here, you're going to want to budget for just living your life and having a good time, but, budget some money for beyond some of these other things to be able to go out and do fun stuff. All right, that's a wrap on cost of living. I hit the key elements that I thought most people might be questioning or concerned with. These are usually the questions we get. What do these things cost? And I wanted to kind of give you both a personal mindset around it, or opinion, as well as just talk about what I found out in general. So hopefully I got it right, or mostly right. If you guys have comments, throw them below, and we'll see you on the next video.